tell me about Consumer Market Insights.
Our company focuses primarily on customer service. We have a tagline. We say we make companies friendlier. And we do that by different ways. We specialize in marketing research, training, and event management. In terms of marketing research, that's something we've always done from the company's beginning, where it's focus groups, online surveys, mystery shopping, all of those things. As a matter of fact, I'm a purebred marketing researcher. I have my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in human development. So I'm a purebred. So that's something I've done all of my life as well as in school and as well as our company, because that's what marketing research is all about. How do you truly understand what's going on from the customer's perspective, as well as customer service can also be on the inside. How do you understand what's going on from the employee's perspective? So we do that many different ways. We work with clients here locally, ranging from DFW Airport, City of Dallas. We've worked with North Texas Tollway Authority. We do a lot of work on the federal side as well. We've worked with HUD, Department of Transportation, FEMA, Department of Commerce, to name a few. So as you can see, we get around. And at the end of the day, with those three areas, there's synergy between them, because it all boils down to how do you perform for your customer in any industry, as well as whether you're doing an event or training.
Are companies finally getting it?
More companies are getting it, but a lot of your large, strong, progressive companies have always gotten it, and that's what has helped keep us in business, because even when the economy is slow or slowing down, your stronger companies know that is what's going to get us back up to where we want to go, or that is what's going to keep us where we want to be. So a lot of our clients hire us when they're staying on the cutting edge. So a lot of times customer service, when things are bad, that's when it's in emergency mode. That's like when you have to go to an emergency room. But a lot of times it's good with customer service. You want to be on the preventive side. The same, analogy of like going to the doctor before you get so sick that you have to go to an emergency room. So we work on all of those sides, but like I said, it's a lot easier and usually less expensive when you can get it on the proactive side.
Roy Reed is here with me. I'm Cheryl Smith on this beautiful Sunday morning. Some people, are you getting ready to go out and hit the streets and shop some more?
Well, Cheryl, I've done a lot of my shopping. I've kind of on the downside right now, and that's one thing, too. I mentioned we do research year-round. That's another area we've been doing a lot of research on is customer service and shopping during the holidays. So I've been working to apply some of those things that we've learned as a business and some of those things that I've been sharing with different audiences over the holidays.
Okay, we need some of those tips because people are out there. I usually, I took my mother shopping yesterday, and she just moved here, so she wanted to buy some clothes that were, this time of year in New Jersey, she's, layered, a lot of clothes. And so to come here is like a different thing for her. So she wants to shop, and the first thing I was saying, well, Mother, you don't need all those things now because, there's a sale picture. They're going to be, like a bunch of sales.
Yes.
If wait, I couldn't. I just said forget it. Just follow along and get with the program. That's what I had to do. But I wanted her to do that. But what I did find is that yesterday, I didn't any, salespeople who were rude. I ran it. Everybody was being really, really helpful. And having traveled internationally, I found that I get better customer service in other countries.
Yes, and it's really interesting to see, too, just that different perspective as well of, what goes on and when you, benchmark customer service around the country or around the world, as you said. And I think, too, sometimes we forget what makes best in class, which we look at here, but also what makes best in the world. or world class, and that's some of the things that you're talking about as well. But even looking at that holiday shopping and even just experience with you and your mother, a lot of times too we see the ideal for holiday shopping is a combination of both. Is savings with a smile, to kind of just put in a little phrase, and that goes on both sides. Can you have a good experience when you go to the store with the sales representatives, but also with ourselves and looking at ourselves as well as with our family members who are with us, because it just tends, unfortunately, at this point to still be a stressful time, kind of like what you looked at. But one thing is we always say it's important to look at, first of all, have a big picture perspective, go with a plan of attack. And that could be as with a list of what you're going to buy, what you need, so you're structured and organized. And that can go with your shopping list and and I'm going to use the example with your mother. That was one. But also with going to buy the things she needs, you also threw in there, okay, this is what's important to her. So that was part of your plan of attack when you said, I'm going to back up. I'm going to make sure this is going to be a good experience for us. I'm going to let her get what she needs, but also look at what she wants. So that's also real important. Go with the plan of attack, and that could be comprehensive. Another thing when you go to the store is remember that these employees, some of them are better than others, but remember they're people too. They're stressed, and so often, for these stores, they're hiring people just for the holidays. So if it's a store that you go to often, you could even know more than they know, which could be frustrating, and that's a perspective we don't look at. So that could, produce frustration in the shopper. But once again, going with the plan of attack, if you have that information and you know what you're going to get. But also, third is getting educated, which is take time, look for sales, look on the Internet at those stores. A lot of stores have Internet coupons and information, so you are well prepared before you go. And then, too, as I just mentioned, that other part about the store employee may not be as well versed as you are, but the good thing is you'll know the questions to ask to be very to be on top of your game. For an example, even I like to look. I looked at a store yesterday of some things I needed anyway, as well as for gifts. The store had 4 more days of 50% off. Well, I knew that going in, and I'd already looked online to see some of the items they had, so I could talk intelligently and say, now, which items in the store around here are 50% off? Now, fortunately, the salesperson knew, but that's just a small example of how you can take control of where you want to go a lot better. You know what that does? It saves you time in the store. It saves you money, and a lot of times it can save you frustration.
Well, you know what? After we went shopping for those gifts, we went to the grocery store, and we had a very short list. There were like maybe 10 items. By the time we left out of the store, about 2.5 hours later, we had spent almost $300. But
okay, sure.
So what I did, I just smiled, and I just went on about my business. Now, there's something, I want to ask you this, what would you recommend about, because some of the stores I went to, even when I was doing those shopping, it was a challenge finding enough salespeople to help you. In the aisles, like there are some stores you go to, you have someone there, can I help you? And then other stores, it was a challenge finding someone. Isn't that a part of good customer service?
Yes, definitely so. But as we were talking about just in general business and marketing research, remember I mentioned before, your stronger, more proactive stores and businesses are going to plan ahead, and others just don't. Some may not even put that kind of emphasis on customer service for that part. They might be put their emphasis somewhere else. Also, too, is there might be some stores, too, who unfortunately may not can afford as many people. Then we'll see if they're going to still be around. But then it goes, and then another category could be the planning, because some stores, with their marketing research, whether it's like hiring a company like mine or doing it themselves, they've missed the frenzies of when their customers are in the store. Okay. And when you miss that, you're not going to have the right number of salespeople when you need them. So those are three different options that could have potentially happened, or it could have been all of the above,
Yeah, I wonder, because that could be very frustrating for the customer. And, you're trying to help people get around if you don't have enough push cards. I guess there are a lot of things you take into consideration, and I know that there are places I think that seem like they are always adequately prepared because they expect to rush, like the Foot Locker stores?
Yes.
And I noticed everyone I saw, there was a long line when it was time for them to open, and they were ready with employees and security.
Absolutely, and that's the key. The same things, because a lot of the same things we're talking about that applies to us as consumers applies to them. That they did their homework, they were prepared, and they were ready. But that cuts down on frustrations. When it goes back to that phrase, if we can have service with a smile and savings, that's the key. Getting in and out and just being prepared and having your people well trained and ready to go makes all the difference in the world.
And I think sometimes we don't think about that. The small business, we expect. I know for years I would tell people to take a deal and then call up there and just talk to Antoinette, because our receptionist there was wonderful. And she was going, and you liked calling the station because she was be there to answer the phone. She was our first. For me, I felt like she was the first line of defense, and she could make or break the station in a lot of ways, depending on how she answered the phone. And she always answers the phone with a pleasant voice, and you are the most important person in the world that she is talking to right now.
Yes, absolutely, and that just makes such a difference. A lot of times people still take that for granted. Of course, I'm dating myself. Of course, in the 80s, there was a really big push about that, customer service, and internally with employees, push. It's still there, and it's a little different, with some companies, the emphasis. But as you said, girl, you cannot forget about that, because that determines if you're going to hold, if you're going to call back, if you're going to come back again. And another thing that people lose sight of, we're seeing a lot more. We've spent a lot of time researching and talking about a lot in interviews, is what's happening with the power that customers or potential customers have in the social media age. Because it used to be that when things didn't go right, we would maybe tell our friend, or they would tell a friend's friend. But now you can put it on Twitter, you can put it on your Facebook account, and it can just go viral. Yeah,
and I saw that one of my friends, Renee Seiler, did that when her bags were lost by Delta Airlines. And folks were just responding, because then people can identify with that. So they started telling their stories about when their bags were lost. And she's hearing from Delta.
I'm telling you, and you know what? Good feedback can really take off, but also we're seeing the damage that bad feedback or conversation can do, and even actually to see how some companies have to backtrack as well. I don't know. This is probably one of the worst happened last month. We can put a book together on poor customer service, but even say, for an example, this one company, which could have been an employee not trained, but you know how you put the person's name on the receipt. I don't know if you saw that in the news, but the waiter put fat girls on there.
Yeah.
And what made that so bad, it was bad enough that the employee did it, whether he wasn't trained, didn't know any better, or didn't care. But when it went to the next line, which was the manager on duty that day, how he responded. If he could have just nipped that in the bud with those ladies right there, it would have stopped. But the way he handled it as well was terrible, and the next thing we knew, it was all on the news. The owners were in it. They've got to backtrack, and that's costing them lots of money and time and reputation that takes a long time to possibly get back, if they can.
Well, the people will do things they don't have a clue of where. It seems like they don't have a clue that it could escalate into something else, and coming sometimes so easily. What I found out is that a lot of companies, and that you deal with this thing called attitude, and she has an attitude with me, or he has an attitude, and that's what I saw that was different. Someone told me that they were on a plane and they kept hitting the button, and the button it was on the arm, the plane they were on, to get the flight attendant, it was on the armrest, and they kept hitting it, and that they were traveling overseas. The flight kept coming and saying, "Yes, can I help you?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the button again." "Oh, no problem, no problem." And they said this happened several times on the flight. Now, I have been on flights in America, and I have seen it the way in America. It seems like the flight attendants act like if you say one wrong thing to me, I'll have you thrown off this plane so fast. No, and it was short. Like a man said, "I like to put my jacket up in the bin," and the flight said, "Well, if you'll wait a minute, I'll be out of your way." And I said to myself, "Oh my gosh, is this the way, is this how times are?" It seems like in a time when we're looking at extraordinary unemployment rates, that people will be a lot nicer, but they aren't.
Yes, exactly. And what we have seen over the course of this year, just saying, because that's where our research we really looked at is, we did some articles and stories on a lot of times this year, Americans have been grumpier. Of course, there's a lot of stress with unemployment and what's going on in our country. But, going back to the basics, there's no excuse for that, and it used to be such a thing as common courtesy, that, old school, when you grow up, you were just taught to be courteous, which was independent of your job. It was just something you were taught to do. So to say courtesy is important, it just may not be as common as it used to be. We laugh and say, but it just goes back to, even the example you made compared to those two airlines. And so often we see, too, that goes to training. But first, not only with training, first it goes to the culture. And that's where our marketing research comes in. What is the culture of that company? A lot of times a company is either going to be customer service oriented or not. It's going to determine where is the value. What do they put in the value of what they do? And earlier we talked about with business, the passion is the service or the product, but also does the customer service and the delivery go in there? What's really important? And now what we do for a lot of our clients is, we can build a composite to figure out where that is. But even as general consumers, you can get a feel of that. If you continue to go and you fly a lot. You say, I see the same thing wherever I fly, whether it's, different times of the day, all of these flight attendants, even when I go internationally, you would tend to say, there's something about maybe this company. Now, a company's culture cannot be customer service oriented. But the other thing is that the sad thing is it could be a company that is customer service oriented, but they haven't invested into training from what the top or management believes when it goes down. And of course, that's the other part of our business that we do. You've got to train and make sure that customer service, if it's part of your culture, is important from the top down. And then it's important, too, to have a zero-tolerance policy. So it's one thing to do training, but then you want to make sure it's maintained. And the management has said, this is important, and there's no other way that we're going to accept it. Now, we've seen with a larger company, then that's a lot more training, and it has to filter down, but they have a lot more clients. But that also applies to small businesses. And sometimes small businesses forget that when they're just focusing on their craft or their passion or what they do well. People want to have good service, and that matters to them, how they're treated often.
It's good you brought that up about the culture, because I was at a hospital, and I just noticed every time I go to this hospital, I don't care who they are, they speak and they smile. And your techs, your nurses, your doctors, your, cafeteria people, folks walking through the hall, everyone who has on something identifying them as an employee of that hospital, they speak to.
Yes.
And it is coming from the top.
Absolutely. Cheryl, that is a great example that you see. There's the culture is there, the training is there, and or they've hired people who also exemplify that culture. And they have made sure that it has gone throughout the hospital. That is a perfect example about that, And by the way, what's the name of the hospital?
Methodist Charlton.
Okay. And, that's another good thing, too. We're talking about passing on good customer service. That's good. People are doing something right. Let's tell that story, too.
Right.
A lot of times we do, and I'm not talking about you, but just in general, we want to get the word out when it's bad, too. But that's another way that we can reinforce when something is going well. The power of a consumer or a customer. Let's spread that good information when it goes back around. But also, too, is, for those people who pick up the phone and call management or write a letter, to the hospital administrator or to the president of a company. When you can do that, that also gives us power as well, because when they hear that from the top, then they're going to, everybody likes good news, they're going to usually promote that, share that, and that's another way we can make sure that that business or organization can keep it going.
Yeah, well, the smile, what I saw about the smile and the speaking, because you never know what a person is going through, especially in a hospital. And
yes.
when somebody speaks to you, they greet you, and, walking by, even if they're on their cell phone and they stop and speak, it speaks volumes. But you're talking about coming from the top, going down, and I want to tell those listeners, even and book and blog talk and all of that, out while we've been talking, you can go to www.thecmiteam.com and find out more about Roiling and her company. But talking about this culture and talking about at the top going down, previously I had two participants on from who want to work for Diddy. Are you familiar with who Diddy is?
And Diddy, okay.
Diddy.
Okay, Freddie.
No, Diddy, D-I-D-D-Y.
Okay.
Puff Daddy,
Yes. Yes.
well, both of the young ladies who were on the show said, and for those of you who don't know, he's a media mogul, actor, rapper, businessman, and he has a reality show where folks would vie for an opportunity to work for him. And the two young ladies actually went by Ebony and Ivory. They said that there was a culture in Bad Boy Entertainment, in his company, that when you walked in the door, you knew you had to be about your business. You, when you walked in there, you looked at the employees, and they were very. It was a very professional atmosphere, and you knew that business was being conducted there. Versus you go to some places, and it looks very lax, and you seems like you could get away with a lot of things. So I guess my question for you, Roiling, is when you start at the top, even where there's Charlton Methodist Hospital, where everyone is smiling and speaking and saying "Have a nice day" or something like that, or working at a place that says, we want you to be on your job all the time. Do you have to? How do you get that out of employees without, I guess, putting fear? Do you put fear in them, or what what helps you develop that culture that you want?
What I found out, Cheryl, in my personal experience as well as our research, what we've studied, and by the way, a lot of the things that we study is research, which is great to be in this arena, is I can apply to my own company as well. But it goes back to having a vision and a plan, and once you execute that, it goes with training. Because let's take, Puff Diddy's business. Obviously, either he's hired people like himself.
Okay.
And if he has not, when they come on, they're trained on that culture of what Puff Diddy expects. And then I would imagine, even though we know his style, he probably has a zero-tolerance policy. What would you think? Our guess with that style. And those are the same things we talked about a while ago with just basic customer service. But because when we talked about it with basic customer service, it's about building a culture. And so those are some of the primary steps of building a culture. When you do that from a proactive standpoint, it saves time and money as well versus having it to do it the other way. Now, I'm sure there are times that you have to do enforcement, with employees or in your culture. But if you can build the overall culture for it to be proactive, that you have the majority of individuals like that. I once went to it was a outstanding restaurant. As a matter of fact, in South Carolina, and that's where my husband is from. So we've gone there year after year, and it's a very well-known restaurant there in Charleston. And when I was talking to, when he was still living, the father, the patriarch of the restaurant, as a matter of fact, it's called Hyman's. Like I said, putting in a plug, it's a seafood restaurant right in the heart. And so when this gentleman was still living, I was like, I noticed, just like what you said, I said, from the bus boys to the waiters to everyone, they were always so friendly. And this was the owner. He would walk around every time we would ever be there. He would be walking around, or his sons, talking to the patrons. Now, I asked him, I said, how do you maintain a culture like this? And I described it. First, it was hard for him to answer because guess what? It was a way of life for him.
Okay.
But I kept probing, and it helps to be in my field as a researcher, so I know how to kind of probe until you kind of get to what you need to know. And guess what he said, Cheryl? It was the most fascinating answer. He says, when you build a culture like this, when anything or anyone comes in that's different, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Isn't that interesting? And so with that, from a management and big picture standpoint, when you can build that culture, as I mentioned before, with planning and a vision, execution, training, and then you maintain it, then therefore it's a lot easier to isolate what's going on in that business. We've all been in the most of us, I think we can pretty much all say we've experienced, when you've been in a company or something and people are talking to everybody needs to do this, and when it's only a handful of people who are doing it.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating. People are like, why don't you just deal with the problem? Well, these are the steps of how you build a culture of it that you can help minimize it. And that's another way you can help avoid just talking big picture when it doesn't apply to at least 80% of your workforce.
That's kind of like in a household, because my mom would say, growing up, she would say, y'all, and it's not y'all, it's, her to say, it's your brother, it's your sister, or it's your cousin, but, with parents, when they're a bunch of kids together, instead of singling out that one who's doing it, they'll just say, all of y'all in there better stop, like all of us aren't doing it, call out the one who's doing it, because they're not going to pay attention to that reprimand, because, they're, kids, you're thinking parent doesn't know who it is, but they do. And it's the same way I think with businesses. This is, as I look at, even, and for those of you who are just joining us, and Royal and Reed is here with us, the company is CMI, Event Management, Marketing Research, and Training. I just wonder if, and when we talk about going into business, if we make management, research, and training a part of our model.
Absolutely, from the very beginning as well, and even like we just talked about with and I'm looking big picture when I make the comment about that is the ultimate way of how you want to be, with not singling out. It really is. It's easier said than done. But I think the key is what you just said, Cheryl, is when you make those components part of your initial plan, that is so important, whether a small business or large business. And then once you execute it, you have to maintain it and continue. And that when you do those components, guess what? It becomes part of your culture because you've created it. You've set this tone, and you have to find a way to maintain it. And we see that a lot with small businesses, but also large businesses can fall into that as well, too, is, remember we talked about you can have a passion when you start off, a passion or a product or a service or something. You've got to look at the business aspect as well. If you don't combine both parts. Some people have a business where they've lost the passion or the focus of the service, which is an issue. But by the same token, if you're just focusing on fixing those great pies or, whatever kind of service you've come up with or an idea or innovation, you've got to look at the people you're bringing in. And even that's something, too, we've always looked at from a small business standpoint. And there have been research how it can easily happen, because if you start a business, what research shows is whatever the owner is, that's what the business is. If the owner is very people-oriented and that's important to him or her, then that's what the business is, such as like the restaurant we were talking about in South Carolina. But then as you build in layers and your company grows, you get management in between you. And sometimes, so often, that might be how the owner feels, but he's not in tune or she's not in tune with what the management structure is. So then that's who the people see. And as you mentioned, Cheryl, earlier, or it's that frontline person. So sometimes the culture can get off if the training and the communication is lost. The other side, too, is sometimes there could be somebody who is a great innovator, great business idea, and they're just not a people's person. And that's okay. If that's the case, then that person has to hire someone between themselves and their business. But the bottom line is service with a smile, creating an atmosphere that people want to come and they feel good about your business. And eventually, when they have another option, they want to choose your business over anyone else. That's the key.
That's the key. That's the key. Now, do you do media training?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Do you do media training?
Well, we, in terms of media training, through us, we work with teaming partners. So what we try to do in terms of media training, like I said, our area of expertise is the marketing research training, event management, but we have a great teaming partner we work with. And so if it's something, we can refer them to that teaming partner for media training. That is just awesome. Or if it's better, for us to work in a comprehensive package or program for someone, we would do that as well. But either way, we could definitely cover that.
Because I've seen people who have, I mentioned earlier, because former NBC5 anchor Ramona Logan actually has a birthday coming up in 2 days, but Ramona does media training, and I've seen her. She brought a station at KKDA with me before, and the person was, had just wonderful to talk about, but was horrible. And it was like pulling wisdom teeth talking to the person in studio. And so usually Ramona goes to the station with her people that she's having on my show, and this time she didn't. And later she talked to, the person, and we were trying to give her advice. Ramona said she was ready. I don't know what happened. It just threw her off. It was like we were trying to plan for an interview maybe like a month away, but time, okay, you better take this time. And so she really hadn't had a chance to do all the training that she needed to do. And I've seen where that has been a downfall for a lot of people who go into business, especially there are certain areas, like if they're real technical.
Yes.
The average viewer and reader and listener is not technical, so they have to be trained how to speak, and then some people still are not good.
Absolutely, and that is, Cheryl, that is such an important point to bring up. Of course, I know Ramona Logan, too. She's great, and that helps coming from that feel. She knows it. There's a number of really good ones out there. Like we just talked about, Ramona Logan, who has a TV background. Also, Jeff Crilley, Real News PR, another good one. So there are several really, really good people out there who not only know the craft and can teach it, but they can also train others. And that's just like, as you mentioned, with the business, but it also goes back to that 15 minutes of fame. When you have it, you want to capitalize on it, because by the same token, as we talked about with good customer service, something like that can help launch you, but it can also set you back. So you want to be careful because it can be a double-edged sword depending on how you use it, and just being ready for it, and just working, getting advice, or being a client of someone like, Jeff or Ramona, who can really work with you and help you. That's so important.
I see that, and I see, there's so much that you have done, and I talk about everything from marketing research, training, event management. Okay, event management, are you talking about like if someone came to you and said, I want to do a conference?
Yes, absolutely. Our event management is more conference conference management. We don't do weddings and we don't do party planning. We may do party planning as a part of a large event or conference, but for the most part, ours have been more or less, we've done some local, but we've done a lot of national events. As a matter of fact, the majority of our clients have been on the federal side. So when we've had a contract for event management or conference management, it may cover a large national event where we're responsible for bringing in attendees from all over the country, or it might be when you work with the federal government, we might be charged with doing a conference, the same or similar conference that's customized across maybe 6 to 8 regions. So we are set up to do that. With our business, we'll do full service, which means, identifying the site, negotiating the contract, and with federal, that can be some special parts to that, to everything with identifying or finding the speakers, marketing communication, all course materials, getting things there on site. And then with our marketing research side as well, we can do the surveys or special reports on the front end for getting intelligence, or the back end for tracking. And then, of course, with the training, that helps us with the speakers, identifying people we know within our realm of contacts, or a lot of times our client may bring them. So it comes with a lot of, different aspects. It could be focus groups embedded into a conference or facilitation. So as you can see, ours is pretty comprehensive. That's why we call it event management. And we see ourselves truly managing an event, which has a lot of components usually, but we can also do partial service if a client only wants a part of that.
Well, I saw you at Quest for Success, and I read about you and everything. I know you have so much going on.
Yes, it's a good time, and it's an interesting time, and we do have a lot going on. The main thing I've tried to do too as a business is apply a lot of these things that we talked about. And I have to do that myself. They always say you need to practice what you preach. So that's something that is important to me, and consistently looking at our team and how do we develop that to move on. Because at the end of the day, we want to grow. And, when you talk about customer service, what's important to me is as we grow, each of our clients should feel like they're the only one. And, of course, that can be but it can be a good challenge that we have to always work on. So that's part of the culture that we work and aspire to do, is making sure that client feels that way. And then that goes into the same components we talked about. We've got to have a vision. We've got to plan. We have to execute. We have to constantly re-examine that. And then with the client feeling that they're the most important one, that goes without saying, that customer service. Because at the end of the day, how can we build, a brand that they know CMI, they love us, we love them, and we have that relationship that can withstand the test of time. That's the goal.
And that's what you would think that most businesses would do. But you do have the ones, and I know I probably kept you a lot longer than you wanted to be, but I have so many questions. One day we'll talk about why, but it's always so important. But they're the businesses who own already. You walk in there and you see that the place has been cleaned up and that the employees are in tip-top shape and everything. And you turn around and you see cameras coming because maybe there's a feature being done. Mm-hmm. And why, and I can talk about this restaurant is long gone, but Clara's Kitchen, that happened where they were impeccable because they were going to be featured on television. And I would think that a part of good customer service would be being camera ready all the time.
Cheryl, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because it's good. Because if you think about what is the purpose of even having the media exposure, it's like you're marketing to bring more people here. But as I mentioned before, it's one thing to get customers there, but can you keep them? And how do you keep them? Because that's what's going to ultimately keep your doors open, keep you in business. And those customers will know the difference, and they will look at it and even talk and look at what you're sharing even right now. So that is important, to the key to business and good business is you want to get customers. And hopefully you can grow, and if that's what you choose to do as a business, because some businesses might say, this is how many customers we have, we're not going to have any more, we're going to maintain and keep them. But regardless, if you want to look at customer retention, if you have that revolving door, then that's a telltale sign as well.
Well, I have to tell you about one industry, and I'll let you go with that. One industry, they don't care, it appears, and that is the beauty supply stores that are not owned by black people.
Yes.
A big story, the documentaries and everything that, but people, we still go there, even if we're treated poorly, and people will tell you, get out.
Yes. I know what you're saying, Cheryl. But then you also look at the culture. Let's go back to everything we've talked about. What is the culture? And that is very interesting. And we do see a lot of times there can be a pattern. People can see a pattern or a culture. But also, what keeps us going back? It's the price and the cost a lot of times, So their culture is to provide those prices and those costs. And some of the places we're talking about, obvious, the customer service part is not a major part, or their perception of their customers is different. But with that as well, you look at how much more could that be if you treat your customers well and provide competitive prices, Now, that might be good for now, but the one thing I look and we see with customers is, we'll keep on going because that's the best deal we have. But what happens when the next beauty supply place opens that can provide a competitive price or is, like I said, within the ballpark? Then who are you going to choose? Then it's going to be kind of late for you to start trying to treat people right now when they have another choice. And so often, too, sometimes people forget business can be cyclical, meaning that you can be on top of the, leading the pack today, but are you planning on leading the pack tomorrow when someone comes out with something that is as good, comparable, or slightly better? Because sometimes it could be that customer service that can keep you there, at the end of the day, and that's that relationship. So hopefully, some of these places will keep on, because who knows what will happen in the next year or two, or, a couple of years.
Well, and when we will get to a point, because I have heard there seems to be a zero tolerance when it comes to black businesses by black people, that we won't tolerate the disrespect or the rudeness or the prices. Oh, these prices are too high because we aren't getting the hookup. But then we'll accept it from others, and I think it's an American thing, because, again, when I've traveled different countries, I don't see the disdain for black people as I see in America. And people talk about, Korean and black relationships, and it's bad in America, and they talk about, or just even if they want to talk about Asian, period. And I've gone to other countries and found it's been totally different, and it's just, it seems to be in America that people come here, they hear negative things about black people.
Sure, and I believe a lot of that is true. Another thing we didn't touch on, and we often talk on, about customer service, is looking at what makes a good customer. And see, sometimes looking at the flip side, there's variations of services that we can get, and what part do we play? Now, and I'm just taking this as an example, what we're talking about, with, some of these beauty supply places, and, they may be Asian-owned. If they hear those things, sometimes do we give a self-fulfilling prophecy, that self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing as well. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I know that there is an issue on the other side. And I'm not saying that this is widespread. It might be a small group, but sometimes it just takes a small group to mess it up with how does a customer perceive the Asian business owners as well when we walk in or from past experience. And how do we talk to them as well? So sometimes it can go back and forth. Now, like I said, this is just a general conversation because I never want to, on either side, we make the generalizations that people bring it on how they're treated or vice versa. But those are just the dynamics we have to look at that some people don't realize. And how do you begin to break a cycle?
Yeah, because we do come in, we do have our stereotypes, and I tell you, TV has not been good helping us to really understand different cultures because because it's been clouded. I was talking to somebody last night. We were talking about this. It was a famous wrestler back in the day that it would really date myself, and he portrayed an Indian, a Native American, and he was actually Italian.
Okay.
And he went by the name Chief J. Strongbow, and he was not anywhere near a chief or,
Yes.
And so we have a lot of things to do, and I guess this will makes it necessary for you to always be there because we're always dealing with stereotypes. And so I'm sure when you're providing research and information, it's because you've gathered it and you can enlighten a client about what is real about their customers, their clientele.
Absolutely, which is that training component. We know diversity is still alive and well. I've done a number of interviews, with, other radio stations too nationwide. And, when all of these issues happen, like with, we're talking about the fat girls or other things that have gone on, just different stories. One of the things, especially mainstream radio personalities always ask, well, Roiling, is there still a problem? Oh, haven't we come along and blah, 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 blah. And, Cheryl, you know what I always say? If it wasn't a problem, we wouldn't be on the radio talking about it today.
Right.
And I'm like, so diversity issues are alive and well. We see them. They're going on, even around this presidential election that we've recently lived through, last month. So we know it's still alive and well. There's some big picture things that affects us all both ways, as you mentioned, the stereotypes on TV, but we also have to just look at ourselves as well. So often we know that comes from upbringing, experiences, everything around us. So the main thing is we just still have to live and do even what we can in our own world. Just going back to the store about going into the some of the Asian beauty supply places that don't tend to treat African Americans as well. So, we've experienced that. We walk in and say, okay, they may not treat me well, but you know what? This is a good price. I'm going to get what I need. I'm going to get out. But you know what? In spite of that, I'm going to go in, and I'm going to try to smile and nod and treat them respectfully anyway. So even that may be down the road. As you mentioned at the hospital, if they see, there's these few people who are treating me blah, 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 So you just never know what can happen. But to your point, there is an issue, and we know there's an issue. We do what we can professionally as a training company, and diversity is one of the areas that we do training for around the country. but also, too, is how can we look at it just as individuals where we go with a smile, service with a smile, or can we receive our service with a
Like
smile?
with the kindness, whether they act a certain way, don't react to what the person is saying or doing. I think we tend to take a lot of things personal, and that brings me because I got a text message from someone, and they said they were in a CVS store, and they said they went to the pharmacy, and they said behind the pharmacy there was one of the workers, and they don't say whether it was a pharmacist or not, but that they had on a blouse and across their chest, I guess it is, there was a big tattoo, and it was a female. And they said that it was not the look that they wanted to see behind a drug counter.
Mhm. Mhm. And with that too, that goes back to that training, the culture and the training. I would assume, if what we've known about CVS, that's not part of their culture, but it goes to training. Is it in their training manual that you shouldn't do that, or how you are supposed to dress? Sometimes it's what we are supposed to do and not to do with the training and employee training, but then it goes back to how is it being managed at that store? How can a manager not say button up your shirt or do something with that? But, that is an issue. Now, a lot of times the first step that a customer can do is speak to the store manager and just say, you know what, I love shopping here, but just as, the lady said, I really don't want to see that here. And that'd be interesting to see what is their response. At some of these stores, the pharmacies are outsourced. But how does that store manager handle that? Does he deal with it if it's owned, and operated by the store, or with another part that's a subcontractor? Either way, what is the culture of CVS? Because at the end of the day, we look at it as CVS if I'm going to continue to come in there or not. And that's a telltale, too, of how they handle it, of where you can go on. But it is important for a customer to say that you can do something, Now, whether or not they say, well, I'm sorry, that's the way it is, then you still have a choice. Can you go to Walgreens or somewhere else, or Walmart, or another pharmacy? But if this is a place you're going, it may be in your neighborhood, you like shopping there, you know the people, then hopefully they will handle it okay. But I would definitely encourage the customer to at least say something to a manager and at least see how it's received and perceived.
Well, I just got to thank you back on it from the text. And what you said, Roiling, really is basic. I think we're talking about business, but you could even apply this. I look at the schools because folks can say what they want to, but there has to be something that is going on at the Barack Obama Academy that is not going on at other schools, because why is it that they can make the young boys pull their pants up and not run in the halls and address adults with respect? And a lot of other schools can't do it.
And you're right about it, and that's where that research comes in. Okay. Where how do we study and look at what's going on? Because first of all, the Barack Obama school has shown us it's possible, and that's a fact, And then once we study that, then the thing is, how can we replicate it, in different ways to see it? But that is the good news, to know it exists. And even what you're just doing, Cheryl, right now, you're passing on good news, through your show, that it does exist. And then, so research is one thing, but even too, as customers, we forget when we take our children to school, education is something we say is a right, or we expect our children to do. But as customers, parents need to be more active with those schools and state that. Say, I've seen this happen at this school. What can we do to make it happen in our school? And truly being a part. But once again, even with that, so often we feel powerless. and we just talk about it, whether it's, going to the store and not getting good customer service, but you do have a choice. Also with schools, it's important to state that. Now, when you talk to schools, and on looking at that side too, is a lot of schools say, if we just had more parents not only give us feedback but be a part of it. Because, once we begin identifying what's going on, if it's truly a school that's trying to work where your child is and they're not in that school, what can you do or what can be done to become part of a solution? And I think a lot of it is going to take us just going back to the basics. So often what we've talked about is back to the basics, common courtesy, getting involved, and just knowing that we as individuals can make a difference, whether we're the customer on the receiving side. You can choose to go somewhere else. You can first identify as the culture. You can say something. You can share it with others. People in your immediate circle. A lot of people are doing it widespread with social media, but you can make a difference. Same thing in the schools. You can make a difference. If this is your child, and you have a child that's not in that school, what can you do in talking to the teacher, talking to the principal, talking to the PTA? And as we talked before, is what is the culture of the school? That will make a difference too. So identify the culture, and one way from a basic way that any of us can do, of course, we get very complex because that's what we do for a living with our clients. But just like with the CVS example, when you go to the manager, when you go to the principal, or when you go to a counselor at a school, how do they respond? Mm-hmm. If they're engaged and say, oh, Ms. Smith, we so appreciate your coming. This has been near and dear to our heart, too, but we don't know how to turn it around. We need some help. Then the culture is set compared to someone who says, you know what, thanks for coming, but there's nothing we can do about it. And then is it just that one person, or is it the whole culture of the school? And then that's important to know, too.
And they'll say, how these kids are. Can't tell them nothing. No, you need to tell them something. That is so great. Roiling, you have been great. I have enjoyed you. You've given so much information. And we must talk again soon. And we're going to see how people respond to just, the customer service comes on both sides because you need to and then, too, when somebody does something, you say, oh, what's wrong with them? They got to do with me. It may not have nothing to do with you at all.
That's right.
I think, even it's something as simple as somebody in a car, and if someone cuts them off, they automatically assume that they knew I was trying to get over it. They may be in another world entirely. You don't know what's going on in the world. And that's what I think there needs to be a little more compassion all around both sides. But building that culture, we're going to have to talk more about helping people to build a culture that they want in their business because it can make or break business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we see even what our president is saying and what the whole country is saying, Small Business Administration, they truly believe, and I'm in Washington a lot, I've looked into the eyes and face-to-face with some of the leaders, even from SBA at the highest level in other areas. They truly believe that small businesses can be the engine of turning our country around, and we've got to learn how to do that, but we've got to do our part and learn how to do it and do it right and do it well. So, but I have thoroughly enjoyed visiting with you, talking, and us just having this exchange. Is always exciting to me to talk about these things, but also share information that can help someone. And then I look forward for us to talk about that, how we can successfully in building small businesses.
Well, look to hear from me really, really soon because I know that even with our journalism workshop, we have young people. It seems like the world is building a culture of the young people who want to do things. You'll find a lot of young people, they aren't saying they want to go into business. They don't say, I want to go work for corporate America. They're actually saying, I want to own my own business.
Interesting, exactly, and we see that. And as you all are doing so well, with your groups and organizations, what can we do to equip them and to prepare them with that dream and vision early on?
Most definitely. Well, I thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing, and look to hear from me really soon. Okay.
Sounds like a plan, girl. Talk to you soon.